This exercise is the thumbnail composition from reference. Now, when I say thumbnail composition, I'm basically saying structure through value. With this exercise, I want you to make some structural changes that the image could benefit from. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our reference here. It doesn't need to be very large. We're just looking for the major value relationships. I've just got a soft brush here. Well, let's see. I want a bit darken area up here. Yeah, a little darken area here. And a little arc here. Let's get that sort of out there. Move that up just a little. I'm thinking I want to go a little brighter here, right? So I'm going to start by blocking in the shape. Okay. Well, something like that. So now we'll take our brighter color and then bring that in. You know, just trying to find these shapes. I know this is sort of a square shape in there, but you want to reference what's there and make sure that you're comparing for accuracy. So now let's make our adjustments. Okay, looks like all this needs to be a little bit higher, right? So it's a little tighter there. And there's a little bit of a curvature. Face, all this is just a little bit too big there. Too big here. Okay. And if we want to, we can soften that up a little bit. It's not really that important. The most important thing is that you're finding the major value relationships. Okay. We might get this just a little bit closer by modeling those trees just a little bit more in the background there. Okay, and then of course we've got a highlight here on our ray. All right, so that's the first one. We might take this selection here and move it over. But now we might want to take this whole image and just compose it differently. So let's say, well, first thing we can do is just change the value relationships. So instead of light and dark, let's go darker here. Cut in these shapes a little bit. That precisely. And we might want to push this even darker. Maybe we want to match that. So the dark of the beak matches the dark of this metal ring here. And then maybe we take this background color, would make that the color of the beak. So now we're taking the same idea, but we're starting to change some of the relationships. So let's continue that. They go to the middle, have a gray, a little bit dark in there. And then let's brighten up there, big there. Okay, like so. And maybe that birdie's quite bright here. Get the beak in there. We'll start trimming this away. That beak is far too intense if I'm comparing it to my reference. And it is important that we use reference for this exercise. So we've got a pretty standard two-tone, and it gives us room to go up and down into the value scale. So let's push some of these relationships here. Let's maybe light on the bottom. Not too much there. I don't care for that too much. Let's go light one top. Maybe cast some light on our subject. Okay. I've made adjustments here to value, but what about position? We're going to position our subject in the scene. Maybe it's too far to the right. So we want to have that opportunity to see a little bit of what our subject is seeing. So we put some space in front of the subject. So that they're facing this way, we need some space over there. Okay. And then they're on this ring. Does it need to be a ring? Could it just be something flat? Maybe something a little more organic? One that gives us an opportunity to have some more foliage and branches in the background right behind our subject. We'll light that a little bit. Maybe we want, again, if we're playing with the value, maybe we want our subject slightly in shadow. There's maybe a light from outside of our view, things casting shadow onto our subject that aren't necessarily in our scenes, or on our canvas rather. See, we're applying it, and then there's some branch up here that's casting a shadow on our subject. We can continue this. We'll do all 6, and we'll make various options for how we could compose this. Maybe we come in a little bit larger. Zoom. Get ourselves closer so we see more. Now again, these are all just thumbnails. We're not too worried about getting these perfect. We're more concerned about figuring out whether or not one avenue is worth pursuing or not. And if we spend all of our time pursuing that avenue to determine whether or not to pursue it, well, we've kind of gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves, right? So we need to be thinking, how do we quickly figure out whether or not we are in the ballpark? Okay. So maybe we like this one. So I'm just saying, let's push a little further. Should we have a little bit of light here? Now this, I don't want to go too far with this. I just want to see, what would this look like as its own composition? Okay. One more. And what do we want to do for this? Well, we'll do something similar, but we'll just invert the relationship again. So to dark on light. I don't think we want to go quite that dark. Because, first of all, we won't actually be able to make it red. We need to have the latitude to can stay roughly in the midtones so that we're able to get full saturation on that. So that is one thing to be conscious of as we're making some of these choices. Okay. Similar thing. Maybe a little darker in here. And I kind of like that. I'm getting lost, losing that edge there. And then maybe just a little bit brighter. Yeah, so we've explored a few different options here. We just have one reference image and we went, okay, similar to what we see. Let's invert the relationships. Let's play around with those a little bit more. Let's change the shapes and move the object a little bit farther to the left, recompose it so that it feels a little bit more comfortable. How about we zoom in and kind of say, what do we really care about in this painting? And if it's the bird's face, the eye, the beak, if that's what we're interested in, well, then let's get closer and crop it right in. And then again, do we need to have that value relationship? No, not necessarily. It could be dark on light, light on dark. Kind of changing the direction of the light. These are your options when you are doing a sheet of thumbnail compositions from reference. What you're aiming to do is to understand the value relationships, the major shapes, and then recompose that to be communicated in an interesting way. All right. This exercise, I think you should do about 6 per reference image to get yourself trying some different options. All right. Enjoy this exercise.